The desire to create something new is one of the fundamental driving forces of all artists in all mediums. Music is no different. Composers have been experimenting, trying new things, and pushing the medium forward since before recorded history. But in the world of classical music, it can be difficult to know where to start. With the canon of tonal music being so strongly developed, and all sorts of contemporary classical styles and techniques emerging, it can be difficult to know how to make something that's truly new, and I'm often asked by newer composers how to get started. Some struggle to come up with and develop ideas, others find it difficult to let go of what they already know, and others struggle to achieve interesting effects or end up sounding opposite to what they intended. I've been studying composition for 4 years at the Royal Northern College of Music, and over this time I've struggled with all of those issues and learned to overcome them. While I won't call myself an expert, I've developed a good understanding of what it means to experiment in music, and have developed some techniques that can make the process much less daunting. This series will serve as a practical guide of how to develop a piece of experimental contemporary music, from planning to writing to refining, and hopefully to performance. To help with the process, I'll be writing a piece step by step as I go. I'll focus on what I consider to be my own area of expertise, instrumental classical music. However, my advice here will not all be exclusive to one medium. Every style of music has conventions, and those conventions exist to be broken. It's my hope that all composers of all kinds of music will be able to find something useful in this series. So, let's begin with the hardest and most important question. Where do you begin? The first question, and perhaps the most important, what is experimental music? Firstly, there's no one single type of experimental music. If there is any set of rules or checklists, it wouldn't be experimental anymore. To me, experimental music is defined by the logic behind it, namely, a newly developed language. In most conventional styles of music, you develop mostly from pre-existing theories or from instincts born from experience. There's nothing wrong with this. I write many pieces from pure experience, and indeed these things will always be a part of your music. But if you want to make something that sounds entirely new, you have to find ways to move past what you already know. This is not easy, but it can be done, and anyone can do it. The first step is understanding. What are your instincts? What are your habits? Why do you write the things that you write? Why do these things sound good to you? Make sure you ask yourself these questions every so often, and keep note of your answers. Through this, you identify the logic behind your own music. These answers don't have to be deep. They can be as simple as, I think it sounds good. Or even just, I don't know. Then, interrogate some of these answers. How else could you achieve the same goals? How important are those goals to begin with? What if you abandoned those goals, or even moved in the opposite direction? What would happen if something wasn't there, or if it was completely transformed in some way? If you think of any answers that sound interesting to you, take note of them. From this process, you build a new language for yourself to use. And you might even find the spark of an idea. Not everything has to be new, and not everything has to be different. Plenty of experimental composers work with conventional tonality or rhythm. There will always be things that are so integral to your music that you don't feel like you can change them. I couldn't write a piece based on pure improvisation, for example. Specificity is too important to me to completely get rid of. But keeping these things in mind, you can develop something new, and maybe better than what you had before. You might find that what's now experimental soon becomes your new standard. Or you might find you prefer what you had before, and be able to better articulate why. This is why I believe experimenting in music is so useful. It helps you better understand what your ideal music is, and work towards finding the music that you want to write. In my case, when I look at my music, there are a few points that I often take as assumed. One of them is the shape of sounds that I use. Typically, the way I use sound is a single object without interruption. When silence appears in my music, it's often in total opposition to sound. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Silence doesn't necessarily have to be the opposite of sound. If I instead treated silence within this piece as a building block of equal value, including it within gestures as a distinct object, and exploring the possible complexities of that concept, I could produce something new and interesting compared to what I've done before. The other thing that has to be done before the piece, the majority of the time anyway, is the initial idea. After all, writing without a goal in mind is very difficult. While some composers build stochastic processes through which they compose their pieces, much as Xenakis and John Cage, for example, spring to mind, designing these processes can also take a significant amount of time and creativity, and will often require just as much preliminary work as a piece composed on its own. Sadly, this is something that's difficult to cheat, as anyone who's ever had writer's block knows. It's difficult to form an idea, and what acts as a source of inspiration is different for everyone. Some seek inspiration from writing, art, film, and other media. Others get it from nature and the outside world, or from politics, philosophy, social life, anything really. Some people develop specific techniques through which they get their ideas. Whatever works for you is the best. In my case, I typically get my inspiration from sounds and textures I encounter in my daily life, as well as from other live music. If you know what gives you ideas, make sure you spend time on those things. Hopefully, it will come to you. That's not to say the only thing you can do is wait. Developing the idea-generating part of your mind is just as important. Think a lot about music, both yours and other people's. Think about how the things you enjoy might be reflected in music. The more music you write and the more you listen to, the easier ideas should come to you. When you know what interests you in music, you can better look for things that inspire those feelings. But the most important thing about inspiration is being ready for it when it comes to you. It's important to have ways to note your ideas down, and it doesn't have to be textual. Some people sketch their ideas down in a score, or even draw visual reminders. Not every idea survives this process, however, because not all ideas are good ideas, and you may find that some ideas you get attached to simply aren't viable. My idea for this piece came this way too. As I was getting to sleep, I pictured a musical texture akin to a brick wall, with bricks of sound glued together by a mortar of silence. For many pieces, this is all the idea needs to be, one small image, and a will to get there. You never need to overcomplicate things, you just need one small spark to start writing. Of course, there's one part of making music that I'm sure nobody's a fan of, but it should still be considered: practicality. If you're making instrumental music, chances are you want it to be played. The unfortunate fact is that some ideas or ensembles require a lot of coordination, budget, and expertise. As a general rule of thumb, the more common your ensemble and the less instrumentalists you use, the easier it will be to find willing players. But the best way to ensure your piece gets played is always to find the opportunity beforehand. In my case, I approached Chameleon Quartet, a unique wind ensemble of multi-instrumentalists, and fortunately they accepted my offer, and their collaboration has been very helpful. There are always ensembles interested in performing new music. Getting your music played is just a matter of finding them. And practicality only matters if you want it to. If you're writing for yourself as a performer, you're the only person you have to worry about. And there are many composers who value their own craft over practical concerns, notably the New Complexity movement, which pursues multi-layered complexity to create some of the most difficult pieces ever written. Both schools of thought are valid, and the definition of practical differs depending on who you ask. But however you decide to write, it should be something you keep in the back of your mind at all times. Once you have your idea, you know what instruments you're writing for, and you have a good idea of the musical language you're going to use, you can move on to the next stage, fleshing out your plans and creating sketches, which we will cover next time. Thanks for watching. I've been Eve Vickers, and this is Building New Music.